Good to be here. The story of our species is a story about compassion. That was Charles Darwin's idea 130 years ago when he wrote about the survival of the kindest. Charles Darwin was a devoted dad, lived a full life with his children, and grieved over the premature loss of 2 of his children. And in that experience, he came to the thesis that sympathy, and not greed or competition, is the strongest of human instincts, arguing that sympathy will be increased through natural selection, for those communities with the most sympathetic members will raise the most offspring. 100 years later, we have a very sound explanation of that that we started to realize in the science of evolution, which is the following. These are 2 of our closest primate relatives. They're adorable. It's the little chimpanzee on your right and the bonobo on your left. Wonderful little cute organisms that are doing a couple of things that are rather unusual for primate offsprings, which is that they're eating, they're sitting up, and they're tending to themselves. These primate relatives are very independent early in life and compared to human offspring. Human offspring, for various interesting reasons in human evolution, were born prematurely, taking 7 to 51 years to reach the age of independence. That meant that we had compassion wired into our social structures, we had compassion wired into our communities, we had compassion wired into our nervous systems. So I'd like to tell you a little story about how we embody compassion and where it resides in the nervous system with a little bit of research that I've done over time. I have been long interested in expression and the universality of expression, and what we've learned is that human beings express a lot of emotions quite similarly. That humans show this very interesting expression that you'll see with the oblique eyebrows when they feel compassion. And so, enthusiastic and buoyed by this finding, I took photos of these expressions to India and the Philippines and asked people what they saw in this great facial expression, hoping for sympathy as an answer. And instead, people gave me responses like, she looks confused, she looks a little constipated, I'm not sure what's happening to her. Well, we learn a lot in our great mistakes, so I studied this other miracle of human communication, which is the voice. It is still a wonder to me that as we squeeze our lungs and air comes through our vocal cords and it travels through the mouth and through the particular configuration of your teeth and your tongue, comes out in amazing signals. And so I asked the question, do we communicate compassion in the human voice? So let me just test you guys out and sort of get you used to this research. I'm going to see if you can understand the particular emotion I'm trying to convey with a very quick sound. This is a sound that I hear from my preteen and teen daughters that has a very rich emotional resonance. Let's see if you can pick this up. You guys ready? Now let me see how good you guys are at communicating emotion with your voice. What does compassion sound like in the human voice? There you go. So what we did is we presented those sounds to participants, and indeed what you see is on our left, other people tried to guess what emotion was being communicated, and 50 to 60% accuracy rates, 7 to 8 times the rate of chance. We know what compassion is in the human voice. You'll notice this finding on the left, which may unnerve you, which is there's no vocal signal for love. I wish you the best of luck on that. So, in our thinking about the evolution of compassion, we also know that we spread goodwill and we build up compassionate communities through contagious behaviors. I got interested in this thesis with this miracle of human communication, which is touch. We have a spectacular 5-digit wonder called the hand, which can do all kinds of amazing things in communication. The largest organ of your body is the skin, where we have cells that process information about touch. That's where our immune system resides, is in the skin. And so I asked a very simple question. Can we communicate compassion through touch? We know in other studies when teachers pat their children on the backs, those children are more likely to speak out in class and do better in school. So in this strange study, we had 2 strangers come to the lab. One individual stuck his or her arm through a curtain. The other one reached out and tried to communicate different emotions like compassion or gratitude by touching the skin of that stranger for just a second. That person then guessed what happened, and what we find, as you see in the blue bars, is that people are guessing accurately compassion, gratitude, and love from the touch of a stranger 7 to 8 times compared to chance guessing. Again, some mysteries of science. We had some very interesting gender differences in this research. When women tried to communicate anger to the man, he had no idea what she was doing. And when men, poor souls that they are, tried to communicate compassion to the woman, she didn't know what he was doing. She thought it was a strange animal walking across her arm. So this is true. What's true of the lab is true with groups. We've now discovered, and you may have heard about this finding, NBA teams, when they do the wonderful forms of communication through touch, the head bumps, the chest bumps, the fist bumps, and the head wraps, the more that NBA teams touch each other at the beginning of the season, the better they do at the end. So there you go. When we show images of suffering to students in our lab and participants in our lab, like this one, what we discover is that compassion is wired into our brains and our bodies. It is part of human evolution. A little part of the brain called the periaqueductal gray, an ancient part of the mammalian nervous system that enables nurturant behavior, lights up when humans feel compassion for those who suffer. When we are exposed to suffering, as Paul Rusesabagina was in Rwanda when he saved the Tutsis' lives, when we are exposed to suffering, a mammalian part of the nervous system that will be active much today, called the vagus nerve, is active. That bundle of nerves that you see the photograph of here helps you communicate, helps you look at people in the eye, slows your heart rate down, and helps you soothe other individuals. That part of the nervous system, the vagus nerve, is interdigitating with oxytocin networks in your brain and in your body. And you've heard about the miracle of oxytocin. It's a little sequence of 9 amino acids produced in the hypothalamus. It goes to your brain and through your body. It helps you read other people's emotions. It helps you trust. It helps you be generous and cooperate. The bar on the bar graph there shows a study conducted in Germany with oxytocin. They gave oxytocin to strangers. They then gave them some money and said, how much money would you like to give away to that individual over there? And when I get a whiff of oxytocin on the left, 50% of the people gave away all their money. We will be giving you oxytocin later in the day for very scurrilous reasons. 2,500 years ago, Karen Armstrong writes of the Charter of Compassion, human cultures around the world face conditions very much like today. There was a lot of greed, there was a lot of materialism, there was a lot of strife, a lot of violence, unprecedented violence and genocide. And Armstrong's argument is that compassion became the story of human culture, that at the heart of all the great ethical traditions is the concept of compassion. It's in the Quran, where they enjoin us to forgiveness and compassion. It is in the words of Jesus, who says to love your adversaries. It is in the words of Tibetan Buddhism, where the Dalai Lama urges us, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. It is at the heart of human culture. Now, we need to cultivate compassion for many different reasons. This is a recent study from UNICEF from 2004, random samples of children from 21 industrialized nations. And what they discovered, the higher the bar graph, the worse the children are doing. And what you see is that the United States ranks 20th out of 21 industrialized nations in the well-being of our children. You may take a strange delight that we beat the English yet again. That always tends to happen. And you'll also notice the Holland that the Dutch are the happiest people on the earth. There are parts of Amsterdam that are happier than who could imagine. But this is why we're here today, which is to change that graph. So that's why we would like to teach compassion. Maybe it's a 4th R in education. The Chinese in Confucianism had a very clear idea about this. The core idea of Confucianism that has led the lives of billions of individuals is Ren, or Zhen. And a person of Ren, which is really reverence and humanity and compassion, brings the good in others to completion and does not bring the bad in others to completion. I have my own version that was given to me by my most important teacher, my mother, who taught literature for 30 years. And a close companion of compassion is reverence, or a finding of the sacred in the beauty of other human beings. And my mom passed this quote on to me from the great Percy Shelley, defending poetry and the act of the imagination, in which Shelley said that the great secret of morals is love, or a going out of our own nature and an identification of the beautiful that exists in thought, person, or action, not our own. Thank you very much.